Imagine you're just walking up to your front door on a totally ordinary Tuesday morning.
Right.
And you reach down to pick up the mail from the hall rug. But there's this one piece that just immediately stands out.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Exactly. It's this heavy, cream-colored envelope, and it has absolutely no return address. So you slice it open, you unfold this thick paper, and you read this chilling warning.
Saying your life is in danger, right?
Right. It says your life is in danger, and you must not trust your own family. Which, I mean, that is just your classic pulse-pounding thriller setup.
Oh, absolutely.
But then you look closer at the ink, and you recognize this distinct forward lean of the capital E.
Yeah.
And you recognize the specific, sweeping curve of the tail on the Y. The warning isn't from a stranger. It's written in your own handwriting.
And that profound cognitive dissonance. I mean, that realization that you are receiving a desperate distress signal from a version of yourself that you just cannot remember.
It's terrifying.
It really is. But it's also the brilliant architectural foundation of the mystery we all just experienced.
It really is. So pull up a comfortable chair, friends. Welcome back to the detective's office.
The cozy back room of the little station.
Right here on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas. Our evening's broadcast is just concluded. The rain is sort of tapping against the windows. The century-old brass bell above the door is finally quiet, and we've got fresh coffee poured.
The best time of the evening.
It really is. And tonight, we aren't here to simply, recap the plot of the letter in her own hand. You were just listening with us. You know how the story unfolds.
Exactly. We don't need a summary.
Right. Instead, our mission for this deep dive is to sort of open up the back of the watch and look at the gears. We really want to explore why this original Chesterton Radio Mystery Theater story works so beautifully.
Yeah, and to really dissect those mechanics, we are going to be pulling from a few different places tonight.
Oh, definitely.
We'll look at the story itself, obviously, but we also need to talk about the foundational CRMT Constitution.
Right, the rule book.
Exactly, the internal document that dictates the whole ethos of these broadcasts. And we also have to trace the lineage of this kind of storytelling back to the 1970s, specifically the CBS Radio Mystery Theater.
No, we have to talk about Agnes Moorehead.
We absolutely do. And finally, we're going to look at how this story updates the classic traditions of Golden Age detective fiction, people like G.K. Chesterton and Dorothy L. Sayers.
Which is such a rich history to pull from. But I actually want to start by challenging the genre classification right out of the gate.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, I found myself struggling with it during the first act.
Yeah.
Because when a protagonist gets a threat about a betrayal within their own family, that usually plunges us straight into pure thriller territory.
Right. You expect panic.
Pure panic. A ticking clock.
Okay.
But Eleanor Vale, our 78-year-old retired school teacher, she doesn't panic at all.
Not even a little bit.
No.
No.
When she reads that letter, she doesn't run to bolt the doors or call the cops. She just methodically takes out her father's silver letter opener.
She goes and makes tea.
Yes. She steaks a cup of tea, and she walks over to the window to analyze the watermarks on the paper in the sunlight. It's like, her calmness just forcefully shifts the story from a thriller into a mystery puzzle.
Well, and that physiological response, or really the deliberate lack of one, that's the defining boundary line between those genres.
How do you mean?
So we often lump horror, suspense, and mystery together under this big umbrella of crime fiction, right?
Yeah.
But they run on completely different cognitive engines.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, like horror is designed to bypass logic entirely and just trigger your amygdala. It's that primal fear of the unknown, the monster in the dark.
Right, pure fear.
Exactly. And suspense is about the agony of anticipation. It relies on dramatic irony. The bomb is under the table and the tension is just waiting for it to go off.
Which actually brings us directly to Agnes Moorehead, because when you say suspense and radio in the same sentence, she is the first name that comes to mind.
Oh, without a doubt. Specifically wrong number.
Yes. Lucille Fletcher's script. It is just the quintessential suspense narrative.
It really is a masterclass.
For those who haven't heard it, in that 1943 broadcast, Moorehead plays this bedridden, isolated woman who crosses wires on a telephone switchboard and accidentally overhears two men plotting a murder.
And the whole performance is just escalating, unadulterated panic.
It's frantic. She's screaming at telephone operators. Her breathing gets so shallow and ragged as she realizes she's the intended victim. The audience's heart rate is just forced to mirror hers.
Because the panic is the point of the entertainment. You are trapped in her terror.
Exactly. And let's just pause and clarify this for our listeners right now. The letter in her own hand is a completely original CRMT story.
Right, it's brand new.
Yeah, it's not a lost, unproduced CBS script from the 70s, and it's definitely not an unreleased Agnes Moorehead performance.
No, but the DNA of her later career is undeniably woven into Eleanor Vale.
Oh, 100%. When Moorehead starred in the very first episode of the CBS Radio Mystery Theater back in 1974.
The old ones are hard to kill.
Yes, that one. She established this very specific archetype. She played a 77-year-old woman dealing with a dark confession. She brought this incredible energy of an elderly, physically vulnerable, yet fiercely intelligent woman to the airwaves.
And Eleanor Vale feels like a direct spiritual successor to that.
She really does.
She operates on that exact same frequency of sharp, seasoned independence. But notice how the author of tonight's story deliberately alters the psychological response to danger.
Right, going back to the tea.
Exactly. By having Eleanor calmly take out a letter opener and make a cup of tea, the author is executing a cognitive reset for the audience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the story bypasses our fight-or-flight response and engages the prefrontal cortex instead, the part of the brain that handles logic and pattern recognition.
Because mystery is fundamentally an intellectual exercise.
Exactly. It's about the intellectual restoration of order. Eleanor's patience is a signal to the listener. You don't need to brace for a jump scare. You just need to pay attention to the details.
And Eleanor is basically setting the rules of engagement for us right there. I mean, I was so struck by the detail where she notes that the heavy envelope landed on her hall rug with a thicker sound than her normal daily mail.
Yes.
She isn't just looking at her environment, she's listening to the acoustics of her own hallway.
She's like a master archivist.
She really is. She doesn't just store information, she catalogs it by context. She knows a piece of paper is out of place the same way a librarian spots a misshelved book, just on a blind corner.
Which brings up a really fascinating philosophical point from the CRMT Constitution.
You're talking about the section on character creation, right?
I am, yeah.
The Constitution explicitly says, let me recall, ordinary people often make the best detectives. Teachers, librarians, engineers, priests.
Right?
Curiosity is more important than occupation. Compassion is more important than brilliance. I mean, that feels like a direct rebellion against modern procedurals.
Oh, entirely. It's rejecting that modern obsession with high-tech forensics, DNA sequencing, and, cynical cops solving crimes with databases.
Yeah, the gritty reboot of everything.
Exactly. It's a return to the epistemology of the golden age of detective fiction. It asks the question, how do we know what is true?
Right.
Do we know a person is guilty because a machine tells us, or do we know because we have a deep, empathetic understanding of human nature?
Look at G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown. I mean, his name graces this very station.
The perfect example.
Father Brown is just this humble, unassuming priest in a shabby hat. He drops his umbrella, he fumbles with his parcels. He looks totally harmless.
But he solves complex murders not by looking at cigar ash under a microscope.
No. He does it through this profound comprehension of the human soul, because he spends his life listening to confessions in the dark. He knows human nature way better than any police inspector knows a crime scene.
Yeah, and let's contrast that with another giant of the era, Dorothy L. Sayers and Lord Peter Wimsey.
Oh, totally different vibe. We have her 1923 novel, Whose Body, in our stack of sources tonight.
Right, and Wimsey operates in this highly theatrical sphere. He's a wealthy aristocrat. He has a manservant named Bunter who acts as a one-man mobile crime lab.
Taking forensic photos and dusting for prints.
Exactly. And in Whose Body, the inciting incident is incredibly elaborate. A respected architect wakes up to find a dead man in his bathtub wearing absolutely nothing but a pair of gold pince-nez spectacles.
It's so over the top. But I mean, the stakes in Sayers' work are often these vast external things. High society scandals, international finance, missing aristocrats.
Right. They're elaborate external puzzles designed to test a superior intellect.
But Eleanor Vale doesn't have a Bunter.
No, she doesn't.
She doesn't have a crime lab or a massive bank account. Her forensics division is just the roll-top desk in her study.
Where she ties decades of correspondence with colored ribbons.
Yes. Categorized by her own hand, family, school, church, personal. Her main investigative tool is the local history room of the Atchison Public Library, working with Margaret Ellis, the librarian.
She solves the mystery through archival context, not chemical analysis.
Exactly. And this is where the genius of the story scale really shines. The Constitution says that fear should come from ideas rather than gore.
Which is so crucial here.
Because when you look at Lord Peter Wimsey's dead body in a bathtub, it's a fun puzzle, but it is totally alien to our daily lives.
Elaborate murders happen to other people in fiction.
Right. But a missing window seat in a childhood bedroom. A strangely familiar photo in a forgotten archive. The creeping terror that you can't remember a pivotal part of your own life. That happens to us.
The fear is deeply intimate.
It is, which makes it infinitely more resonant. The mystery isn't just in her house, it's inside her own mind.
And that transition, that inciting incident, is just brilliant because it takes a foundational genre trope and turns it inside out.
The locked room mystery.
Exactly. The classic setup where a murder happens in a room sealed from the inside, and the detective has to figure out how it's physically possible. Writers like John Dixon Carr built entire careers on that architectural impossibility.
But tonight's story internalizes that locked room.
Yes, it turns Eleanor's own memory into the locked room.
She is basically standing on the outside of her own consciousness, trying to break in. The letter she gets has 3 very specific instructions.
Right, what were they again?
When Richard comes on Thursday, do not sign anything he places before you. Trust no explanation until you have remembered the blue room. You wrote this once. You simply do not remember writing it.
The psychological terror of that is just devastating.
It really is.
Because the human brain is supposed to be our one safe haven. We rely on our memories to tell us who we are. When that's severed, when your own mind keeps a secret from you, it's profoundly unsettling.
The author forces Eleanor to investigate herself as if she were a hostile suspect in her own life.
Which is such a cool concept.
It is. But here is where I have to play devil's advocate for a second regarding the rules of the genre.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the entire foundation of Golden Age detective fiction, the sacred pact between the author and the reader, is fair play.
Right, the reader must have the same clues as the detective.
Exactly, at the exact same time.
Yeah.
So if the detective is literally missing the internal memories required to solve the case, doesn't that inherently break the rules? Like, how can it be fair play if the clue is locked behind amnesia?
Well, it seems like a paradox, but it actually adheres to the rules of fair play more strictly than most modern shows.
Really? How so?
Let's look back at the CRT Constitution. It says, the mystery should invite readers to solve it. The clues must be present. The solution should feel surprising, yet inevitable.
Okay.
The author doesn't cheat the listener. We aren't expected to read Eleanor's missing mind. Instead, we are given access to the exact same external physical clues that Eleanor uses to rebuild her memory.
We track the paper trail together.
Exactly. We are solving it right alongside her using tangible evidence.
Okay, let's trace that paper trail then. Because the breadcrumbs are meticulously laid out. It starts with the paper itself.
The watermark.
Yeah, she holds the envelope up to the light and sees the watermark. Whitmore & Sons, Boston. She doesn't just magically intuit where it came from. She takes action.
She goes to the library.
She goes to the library and collaborates with Margaret Ellis. And they pull this 26-year-old commercial ledger from Baxter & Lowell, the old defunct bookstore that used to be right here on Commercial Street.
Such a great local touch.
I know, I love that. And there it is, in faded ink, a record showing that Eleanor herself special ordered 3 boxes of that exact premium stationery over 2 decades ago.
She has no internal memory of it, but the empirical evidence proves it.
Right. The ledger acts as the first anchor in reality.
Yeah.
It establishes a timeline. And then there's the second anchor, the visual evidence.
The uncatalogued archival photograph.
That scene gave me absolute chills.
It's so eerie.
Margaret brings it out from the basement. It's this old sepia photo of a family on a porch. Eleanor recognizes the architecture. It's her own family house on Walnut Street, long before she inherited it.
But the clothing indicates it predates her birth.
Right. Yet there's a little girl on the porch, standing with her head slightly tilted, her hands clasped tightly behind her back.
And Eleanor looks at it and says, she shouldn't be there.
Because that specific idiosyncratic posture belongs exclusively to Eleanor's late sister, Margaret.
The author's doing something so sophisticated here with state-dependent memory.
Yes. Seeing that specific physical posture triggers this cascade of associated memories about her sister's illness, her sister's tragic battle with memory loss.
So all the puzzle pieces are face up on the table for you, the listener. The ledger proves the paper's origin, the photo introduces the sister, and the theme of inherited memory loss.
And the handwriting proves the author.
Right. We have all the data. But while Eleanor is trying to assemble these pieces into a mirror to see her past, we are completely distracted.
Oh, totally. We are trying to assemble the pieces into a weapon to catch a villain.
Because we have been conditioned by heavy media consumption to look for a predator.
And enter Richard, the nephew, the absolute perfect red herring.
Let's talk about how the author weaponizes our cultural cynicism with Richard. How is he introduced?
Well, he arrives a day early, which catches Eleanor off guard.
Right.
He brings fresh cinnamon rolls from the local bakery. He's sweet, he's attentive. And then he mentions almost too casually that he wants to get an independent appraisal of Eleanor's house.
And what does your true crime-addled brain do with that?
Oh, neon warning signs everywhere. We've been trained by thousands of hours of podcasts and documentaries to apply this availability heuristic.
Yep.
You hear elderly aunt, valuable real estate, and attentive nephew, and your brain immediately retrieves the most sensational narrative: elder abuse, financial fraud, a plot to steal the house.
And even Eleanor falls prey to this cognitive bias. She applies the rule she taught her high school students for 40 years. Cui bono? Who benefits?
Right. Someone is warning her about Thursday. Richard arrives on Thursday. Therefore, Richard is the threat.
The logic seems sound, but the premise is flawed because it assumes malicious intent.
We spend the whole narrative just waiting for his mask to slip. I was practically begging for him to pull out a poison syringe or a fake deed.
But the climax in the Blue Room completely subverts all of that cynicism.
It really does. Let's look at that resolution. Eleanor finally pieces together the layout of her childhood bedroom. She remembers the built-in window seat beneath the sill.
So she and Richard pry up the floorboards where it used to be.
And what they find isn't a dead body or a murder weapon.
It's a battered tin document box.
Belonging to her mother. Inside are old family papers, a faded diary, letters tied with blue ribbon. And there, buried in the dust, is an unfinished draft of the exact letter she received on Tuesday.
The locked room of her mind finally springs open. The suppressed memory just rushes back.
26 years ago, her sister Margaret began showing the early signs of memory loss.
And Margaret was petrified. Eleanor would suffer the same fate.
Yes, she was terrified. Eleanor would lose her anchor to the world. So she forced a younger Eleanor to write a letter to her future self as a psychological failsafe.
If I forget, promise you'll remember for both of us.
The letter was meant to warn Eleanor never to sign away the house, the family's historical anchor, until she looked beneath the window seat to remember who she was.
But Eleanor didn't finish the draft before Margaret's illness accelerated. The draft got packed away and forgotten.
So the mystery instantly shifts. If the draft under the floorboards is unfinished, who mailed the completed cream-colored letter on Tuesday?
Right. Who knew this deeply guarded family secret, had access to Eleanor's life, and waited over 2 decades to act?
Margaret Ellis, the librarian.
It's brilliant.
Eleanor copied the unfinished draft after her sister's funeral, sealed it in that Whitmore & Sons envelope, and handed it to a young Margaret Ellis with this heavy instruction.
Mail this to me if I ever start forgetting things the way my sister did.
And Margaret Ellis kept that promise for 26 years. She only mailed it when Richard visited the library and casually mentioned he was worried his aunt was becoming forgetful.
It's a breathtaking revelation. It forces a complete retrospective reevaluation of every character's motives.
Richard wasn't trying to steal the house.
Not at all. Commercial developers were buying up the block, and he was getting an appraisal to protect Eleanor, to make sure she wasn't taken advantage of.
He wasn't a predator. He was a protector.
And Margaret Ellis wasn't a stalker terrorizing an old woman. She was a fierce guardian executing a sacred trust.
The story actively invites us to assume the worst about human nature, lets us marinate in that cynicism, and then completely dismantles it.
It cures us of our own bias.
It does. And that structural choice elevates the story from just a clever puzzle into a profound emotional experience.
Which brings us back to the ultimate mandate of the CRMT Constitution. Every story should leave the reader with more than the solution. It should reveal something true about people. Whenever possible, it should leave the reader with hope.
In a modern thriller, the emotional payoff is almost always punitive. The villain gets handcuffed and shoved into a squad car. Equilibrium is restored through punishment.
But here, the equilibrium is restored through grace and preservation.
When Richard laughs at the dusty tin box and says, "We tore up the floor for this," he isn't mocking it.
He's profoundly relieved.
Yes, he's looking at pressed violets and children's drawings. He realizes his aunt isn't losing her mind. She's reclaiming her history.
And Eleanor's response is the emotional thesis of the whole broadcast.
We tore up the floor to remember why this house is worth keeping.
They didn't find gold. They found proof that they existed, that they loved each other fiercely.
It proves a mystery doesn't need a villain to be compelling. The mystery of who committed the crime is less enduring than the mystery of how deep does human loyalty run.
Solving that expands our capacity for empathy.
It really does.
Hmm.
And we see this theme mirrored in the very architecture of the little station itself.
Oh, definitely. Think back to the inaugural CRMT broadcast, The Bell Above the Door.
The origin story of the century-old brass bell hanging right outside this office. That wasn't about catching a criminal either.
It was about the old stranger walking into the station in the rain, carrying that heavy, tarnished bell engraved with Commercial Street Radio Club 1908.
A group of young men, a pharmacist, a machinist, and engineer gathering in a back room to experiment with wireless telegraphy over a century ago.
They believed voices would travel through the air someday.
And they made a pact, a promise to a future keeper of the bell, that it would be preserved until there was a place on Commercial Street where voices were carried through the air to those who wished to listen.
To remind people in the dark that they aren't alone.
The arrival of that bell a century later was a promise kept across time. Just like Margaret Ellis mailing that cream-colored letter was a promise kept across decades.
These are mysteries of restoration. They celebrate the capacity of ordinary people to remain faithful over vast stretches of time.
Time might degrade physical memory, but it doesn't have to degrade loyalty.
Beautifully said.
While looking out the window of the detective's office, the rain has finally stopped on Commercial Street. The street lamps are reflecting off the wet brick, the brass bell is quiet, and the station is completely still. I think it's time we wind down for the night.
But before we sign off, I want to pose a thought for you to take with you into the quiet of the night.
Please do.
We've talked a lot about the weight of ordinary objects and the mechanism of memory. Think about the physical spaces in your own life right now. The cardboard boxes pushed to the dark back of the attic, the letters shoved in the bottom drawer of your desk, the promises you made to yourself when you were younger out of fear or love, that the friction of daily life has caused you to simply forget.
Wow.
If a younger version of you could mail a letter to your present self today, what vital truth would they be desperate to remind you of? And when you opened that heavy, cream-colored envelope, would you even recognize your own handwriting?
What a beautiful, haunting question to end on. Thank you for staying late, pulling up a chair, and spending this hour with us in the detective's office. We warmly invite you back to the little station on Commercial Street for tomorrow evening's original presentation of the Chesterton Radio Mystery Theater. Because, well, every mystery begins with a question. The very best mysteries leave us understanding people just a little bit better than before. Good night, everyone.